It's there! Holy moly, this one's going to go big.
Hello and welcome back to the channel. This is going to be a direct follow-on to the previous video on the channel, which is the cheating attract mode, which was found in the Union Jackpot JPM low tech here. There is some extra information that I can add on now to give us more details around what was going on with this machine. So, first things first, as ever, I started a thread over at Desert Island Fruits, which I always do for every new video, and this one has gone pretty hot. At the time of recording, it's had 138 replies, couple of thousand views. They are, by Desert Island Fruits' standards, they're actually pretty big numbers, and we've had a good old conversation about it. Now, I don't particularly want to just read through a forum thread, because that's kind of what the forums are for, but there are some particular points that I do want to focus on here. Now, the first and probably biggest one is John Parker here, who donned his investigator's hat and set about the task of trying to find the bit of code in Union Jackpot that actually does the attract mode tell. I guess you could. At the point of the previous video, there is a world where you could almost argue, if you really wanted to, maybe it was an unintended consequence of something else, a weird little bug in the code or a routine that wasn't accounted for properly. Now, in fairness, nobody has tried that line on because I think this one was just too blatant, but it's never a bad thing to have actual proof, and John Parker has found that with this here, which is the actual code that does it. So there it is. Now, obviously that's in assembly, so if you don't understand assembly, and I don't particularly, so fortunately John Parker has explained to us exactly what that routine is doing, but it's a very small, very neat piece of code that does this. So what he's saying here is as follows. In simplified terms, what happens is there are the usual high-resolution compensators. These periodically are read by a routine that makes a low-resolution representation of the machine's happiness. When the code is running that it is just about to display the 20p string, there is an unexpected surprise. It checks one of the low-resolution compensator values, and if it's more than 3, then it sends a flash command to the 7-segment display that is later cancelled after 20p has finished showing. Completely intentional for sure. For those interested in the technical side, here's some info. He then shows us where the low resolution compensator values are stored as 4-byte words, and then this tiny little bit of code here that does the flashing bit, and in simple terms it reads a low resolution compensator value which is stored at a specific location in memory, and if that value is more than 3, it flashes the 7-seg display. This is such a tiny piece of code that you can make it go away by just switching a single byte from 1 to 0. What this means really is that this is clearly code that was put in by the guy who wrote it, because it's very tidy, very small, and completely contained within this little routine here. It knows exactly what it's doing and how to do it. If you're not clear on these high resolution and low resolution compensators, fortunately, we've got an explanation there again from John Parker, and what he's saying is that high precision compensators can have a value between 0 and 65,535. That gives the machine a nice precise read of how it's doing. Once per credit loop, it will run a bit of code to make a low precision value. That's then used to drive whatever profile the machine should play like, e.g. 3 behind player or break even, 4 slightly ahead of player, and 5 extremely ahead of player. So when it's running this bit of code, it's doing it in the most efficient way possible. It's not using those larger, more cumbersome, high-resolution compensators. It's going straight for the precise location in the machine's memory where that low-resolution compensator is stored. So if you wanted to put a really quick, tidy, neat little attract mode tell into your machine, this is exactly how you would do it. And this was removed by the £8 upgrade. This machine got an upgrade to the £8 jackpot. Now, I already knew this before I made the previous video that the cheat is not on the £8 ROMs. However, I didn't want to put it into the original video. It wasn't really relevant and I didn't want to dilute the point. However, on the £8 upgrade, it never flashes. Now, I'd already spent quite a bit of time playing around with this on the £8 jackpot. As you can see, it's a bit of a dirty £8 upgrade in a way. The only two values that get changed are the red 7s and the Union Jacks themselves. It would have been nice to see the triple bars go up to £4, but they didn't. And it doesn't matter how much of a drift this thing gets. Let me just drag this down here. Can you see? This is over 10% adrift from target. It's had nearly £600 through it, and it owes us over 60. You see there, it's just come around there. It's not flashing. I went even further than that with it, and it's quite hard with the low tech, and it can just drop the streak in as well. But I managed to get it even more below percentage than that. I was already sure that it didn't do the flash, and yeah, it just doesn't matter how far behind this thing gets. It doesn't do the flash on the £8 jackpot. I asked John Parker about that, and he said that basically the code in that area is the same in both ROMs, except the cheat logic to read the compensator state and change the 7-seg flash status has been stripped out. So he just stuck it in there, and on this later ROM, a programmer simply removed it. So someone at some point, for some reason, took this cheat, this compensator attract mode tell was taken out of this machine on the £8 rechip. Now, we don't know if that was the guy who originally wrote it or somebody else at JPM who came along afterwards. What we do know for a fact is it isn't present in the £8 jackpot ROM. What we don't know is exactly why that was done, but it's still interesting that someone somewhere along the line said, get that code out of there before we put the £8 upgrade out of the door. And some input from another member at Desert Island Fruits here, who is a coder by trade, who says, I've always argued more on the side of never attribute to malice that which is adequately explained by stupidity, or whatever the phrase is. As a programmer, I've usually been able to convince myself of a mundane explanation for most emptiers, etc. However, this is clearly inserted on purpose for the sole reason of discreetly leaking information. Now, fine, I get that we sort of already knew that, but it is good to see the code behind this and to have it explained to us clearly. I mean, John Parker, for example, wrote Arcade Simulator and a load of custom code and hooks to get it to plug into the emulator in a way that was never intended to happen at all. Remember, the emulator is closed source, and John Parker was able to punch enough holes into what it was doing to make Arcade Simulator a thing, and he built that entire thing himself. So this is a guy who clearly knows what he's talking about. He's a very competent coder, and he is saying categorically that is not in there by accident. And I'll just jump forward to one of the later comments on the thread, which is this one here, to say, I've said the same as Degsy for years. There is a top tier, possibly between 7 and 10 people in the country who regularly pay the coders for tells or empties. They use the info for a few months, less time since the internet, and make a shed load. When the machines are getting to be resighted, they sell the info for a reasonable fee, probably enough to cover their original outlay, to the second tier, which is probably a couple of hundred in the country. These guys are not so coy with the info, and there are a lot more of them, so the clever watchers will pick up on it. This is when the code is very near to rechip, as the watchers are what I'll call the third tier. They get the scraps by watching, or when the internet forums started from there. Then it's rechip time with the "we found a bug" line, and we'll send out new chips for your engineers to fit. And so the cycle starts again. If it's a popular machine, the empty will move from one free feature to a different one, for example. If not a popular machine, it'll just be chipped to flat gameplay. And more along those lines as well from Mikey Monster, who says, I was just outside the big boys. My mate claimed he was one of the first 10 or so in the country to get info, but it cost. Him and his mate paid £1,500 for supercharged, and this was about the norm. Money laundry, if I recall correctly, they paid £1,000 for. But by far their biggest investment was the 10p trick on the £500 randoms like Spin-A-Win and Hurricane, where you could get £2 spins for 10p a pop. They paid £24,000 for this, half up front, half when they had made it, and recouped it in 7 days, making another 50 to 60,000 before it hit the front pages of CoinSlot. So there's a lot going on there, folks. That is a long thread. There's been loads of good posts from the members there. I don't want to spend too long just reading them out. I think the best thing to do, really, as I say, if these look like interesting conversations to you, sign up over there and join in the conversation, because this one has gone to some interesting places, and there's a lot of people chipped in with their own experience and information, which adds in to that bigger picture that I was trying to build for you in the previous video, whereby this one thing by itself isn't an absolute game changer in that it doesn't massively alter the overall picture of what we already know, but it is another substantial block in that structure that obviously exists. My channel alone provides irrefutable evidence of the real code from real machines running and doing all kinds of dodgy shit. This is another piece of that puzzle. And if you want some idea of how stuff like this happens, how does that happen? It went out in the dodgy cheating way, and then somebody at JPM made it go away later on. Well, this was actually part of a different thread from a little while ago. It was the top dollar release thread by Vectra here. And what we have are now this was not the way this conversation was going to. We were actually trying to unpick information about what ROM sets we had for this. But this is the official Red Gaming software release report for a top dollar chip release from 2001, October 2001. Can you see there? This is the production software for top dollar. This is a non-critical update to improve performance if required, whatever that means. Now, one thing that we found over the years, looking at these ROM revision release notes, is that they often are very oblique about what they're referring to. The rechip, for example, for Arcadia by JPM, where they chipped out Shoot 'em Up, that famously referred to something along the lines of it was reduced the frequency of awarding a certain low-down feature. They didn't even call it Shoot 'em Up. I half wonder if this is Red Gaming speak for, oh my god, we made a whoopsie, we're chipping it out. Anyway, that's not the important bit here. The important bit is this. You can probably see the problem here. Software engineer, Andrew Holmes. Tester, Andrew Holmes. Signed off, Andrew Holmes. Now, there is no suggestion here whatsoever that Andrew Holmes was in any way dodgy or did anything dodgy. Let's replace Andrew Holmes with a theoretical bent programmer. The kind of programmer who is looking to do something like that. Let's call him Horatio Wilberforce. And Horatio wants to put something dodgy into his machine. For personal profit, to sell it into a top-tier network, whatever it may be, Horatio has got dodgy code on his mind. Well, the good news for Horatio is that not only does he get to write the software to put his dodgy code in, he then gets to test it to make sure that his dodgy code works as he wants it to, and then he gets to sign it off. And just like that, Horatio's dodgy code for his fruit machine is now out in the wild and potentially running on thousands of units up and down the country. Now that there is astonishingly bad practice. To have one person writing, testing and signing off the entire shooting match is appalling practice. That is into the realms of negligence. It doesn't mean that Andrew's done anything dodgy deliberately. What if Andrew just makes a mistake? Andrew writes the code with the mistake in it, he tests the code with the mistake in it and doesn't catch his own mistake, and then says, that's fine, I'm going to sign it off. Now, apparently, this was not uncommon. We have been told many, many times over the years by people who were in a place to know that this was not uncommon, that the coding teams within fruit machine companies were often A, very small, and B, under a lot of pressure. And that's where I'm going with this, because I have no personal antipathy towards whoever did that. Whoever put that dodgy code into the £6 Union Jackpot, fine. It was an awfully long time ago. It doesn't make any particular difference in the here and now. This is not about revenge. It's not about exacting some kind of biblical vengeance 30 years after the fact. God knows many of us did all kinds of stupid shit when we were younger. If there was some kind of system in place for getting done for stupid shit when you were young, I'd be in a world of pain. So it's not about that. What this is about is increasing our understanding of what happened in the past and putting some context around the world of compensated fruit machines as it existed. My take on this is that this is a failure of leadership. This is a failure of the people at the top of these companies who allowed nonsense like this to proliferate for decades and never got on top of it. It's also a failure of regulation, because how can the same kind of stuff go wrong for decades and decades and decades and nobody stops it? How does a machine like Cash Attack, the Barcrest machine Cash Attack, the £35 one, the later one, that was vulnerable to plugging? Plugging had been a thing since the 1980s. It was a fundamental core weakness in AWP design that somehow the industry as a whole never managed to get on top of. And by accident or by design, Barcrest put out Cash Attack, which was pluggable on a £35 jackpot. That there perhaps gives us some clue to how stuff like that can happen. So this is not about any kind of individual witch hunt. It's not about pointing the finger at anyone in particular. I don't know the name of the person who coded Union Jackpot. I don't want to know the name of the person who coded Union Jackpot. The point is that this helps us to understand. This gives us context, and it doesn't matter that it's decades after the fact, because there are things that we can carry with us for a lifetime. And certainly my 10 years of addiction are part of who I am. They are part of my past. They were a very traumatic number of years for myself and quite often the people around me. If I can still do anything extra now in the year 2025 to help understand that, then that to me is a valuable exercise. And from all the comments that we have here at Desert Island Fruits, it's a valuable thing for some other people as well. That also leads into the Gambling Low Ebbs videos. I remember when I first uploaded the first Gambling Low Ebbs video in May 2018, that one and the second one as well, there were quite a number of comments being left by people who were saying words to the effect of, thank you for saying this, thank you for finally giving a voice to what happened to me as well. I went through something like this. Or if you want to rewind the clock even further, back to the Fruit Forums days, I still remember that thread there started by Nesto Man called The Real Price of Fruit Machines, which became a sort of group confessional for people to speak about their own addiction and the damage it had caused to them, their lives and the people around them. And back specifically on Union Jackpot, there was a post over at Casinomeister, because I linked to my videos over at Casinomeister as well. There's a comment there from Slot Zombie saying, I had loads of these in rank bingo in the early 90s. Never knew about the tell and regularly got rinsed. I asked Slot Zombie about the numbers involved and he said, Ranks, a national chain, usually had a small row of about 3 or 4 of them. So here we are, 30 years after this machine was newly released, and we've got a guy there saying, yeah, I remember this, it used to kick my arse. And obviously that makes sense once we understand what was going on. The behaviour of the Flash on this is very, very interesting because of the way that the compensator can still have value in it long past the point where you think of it would have finished. Once you get one of these that's had a decent chunk of cash through it from a factory reset, if you drain the compensator completely and turn a flashing one into a non-flashing one, even for a £6 jackpot low-tech, you might be slightly surprised how much money this can take and how quickly. On one of these that's been thoroughly drained, you can very quickly find yourself 30, 40 or even £50 down, and the compensator will still not have corrected back into flashing territory. And sometimes it'll want to get quite a drift in its favour before it will start flashing again. Now, remember, we're going back 30 years. So if you've been, let's say 40 quid, let's take the midpoint. If you've been £40 into one of these in 1995, a £6 low-tech, that's a fair chunk of cash. So in the case of Union Jackpot, let's just say that there are a few hundred of these going out to rank bingos around the country. Maybe somebody at rank bingo said, okay, we'll take 300 of them off you, give us a 10% discount. JPM's like, okay, 300 units, not a bad sale, there you go. 300 units, 10% discount, bosh. And rank bingo stick 3 or 4 of them in each of their sites. If you know the compensator tell for that, there's potentially some good money to be made. And the flip side of what I just said is true. The way that you can lose a surprising amount of money on this, the inverse of that is true, that as long as that thing is flashing at you, you're going to win more money. You can take 40, 50, 60, even £70 of profit out of one of these on the £6 jackpot when that compensator tell is flashing. Multiply that by 3 or 4 units per location. Obviously not every single one's going to have that much in it, but you can see all of a sudden there's potentially some big money to be made just out of one low-tech that's got a compensator attract mode tell on it. But just to be clear, I want to make this crystal clear. This is not about vengeance. It's not about the guy who wrote Union Jackpot. It's about the industry as a whole, the failure of leadership in this industry, the failure of regulation that allowed things like this to be a thing for decades, and the human damage that that caused, and why that's relevant now. And I know this just from the conversations we've had at Desert Island Fruits and historically comments that were left on my channel, particularly on the Gambling Low Ebbs videos, and I know this personally for myself, is that even all of these years later, it is still useful to understand this, to put more context around this world in which we were existing, where we had no idea that we were just little fish effectively swimming in shark-infested waters and that we had no chance of prevailing unless we could become part of the problem, unless on some level we could become a shark ourselves. I guess I became a very small shark, but I could, of course, win on fruit machines. From the year 2000, 2001 onwards, I got enough information to be able to win consistently on fruit machines. I literally stopped losing. At that point, from late 2000 onwards, I became a winner. Long term, over time, I won consistently on compensated fruit machines. And I'm very much aware of the fact that that makes me part of the problem as well. Because for every Psycho Cash Beast or Lot of Luck or later on Alien, whatever it was, for every machine that I left battered in my wake, somebody else would have to come up behind me and fill those things up. Be they casual players, not that there are any of those left by the £70 days, of course, or addicts, people who were in the position that I had been before I got a clue. And I think that's one of the most evil things about this whole edifice, is that the only way you can win, the only way that you can get on top, is you have to become part of the problem. You have to become effectively complicit in the crime. You have to be a person who is exploiting these things, using knowledge of whatever it may be, things that may be what we might call legitimate cheats or just outright dodgy shit. Unless you're prepared to do that, you can't win. So even if you can win on machines, you kind of have to sell a little bit of your soul in the process. That's why in the previous video, when I went back and talked to my former self, it wasn't about, hey mate, you can win loads of money on these machines, just make an effort and you can make a fortune. It was to never ever touch them, never ever play them, because you cannot win. Either you lose money and you just lose everything associated with that in the process, be it money, friendships, relationships, jeopardize employment, whatever it may be. Either you become a loser in that regard, or you become a loser because you have to become, on some level, immoral, because there is a core of immorality to all of this. I am not proud of it. Looking back on it now, I am not proud of my winning days on fruit machines at all. I wish I hadn't done it, but I was so blinded at that point by the prospect of being able to turn 10 years of losing into winning that I compromised myself and didn't think about the consequences of my actions because it was more important to me to win. That is my fault. That's my problem. That's my guilt about all of this. But we cannot uninvent the past. We can't erase the past. It's fixed. It happened and we did the things that we did. But we can still understand what happened and put that context around it. And that is what all of this stuff is about. So I'll leave that one here for now. Like I say, there will be some more stuff coming on these attract motels and other dodgy stuff that's in the code of some machines. This conversation is still running at Desert Island Fruits, but I think we've got the major elements of it thrashed out now, which is why I've just gone with making this follow-on video now. So thank you very much for watching. I do hope you've enjoyed this video, and I will catch up with you next time. But for now it is goodbye.
Fucking do it, fucking do it, fucking do it, fucking do it, fucking do it. Fucking do it, fucking do it, fucking do it. Fucking do it, fucking do it, fucking do it. Fucking do it, fucking do it, fucking do it. Fucking do it, fucking do it, fucking do it. Fucking do it, fucking do it, fucking do it. Fucking do it, fucking do it, fucking do it. Fucking do it, fucking do it, fucking do it. Fucking do it, fucking do it. Fuck off! Twat! Fucking do it, fucking do it, fucking do it. Oh, fuck off! Fuck off!